The Purple Line is a community podcast bringing you in-depth conversations with diverse leaders in the public and private sectors. Whether you're a student looking to gather advice or a professional tuning in for valuable resources, our dynamic programming provides tips for all ages and backgrounds. I'm your host, Keith Fernandez, and this is The Purple Line. David Olivencia is an accomplished global technology executive and author with deep experience delivering measurable business results for leading organizations. He's the CEO and co-founder of Angeles Investors. Prior to Angeles Investors, David held various senior executive positions of increasing responsibility at Nippon Telegraph and Telephone, NTT, Ford Motor Company, Oracle, Verizon, Softtek, and Accenture. David has leveraged his expertise in technology, business strategy, digital platforms, and networking excellence as an early-stage angel investor in 70-plus companies. He's been recognized as 40 Under 40 by Crain's Detroit Business, Crain's Chicago Tech 50, and Hispanic Business Magazine's Most Influential Hispanics in America. From a board service perspective, David has served on many private, civic, and nonprofit boards throughout his career. David Olivencia, thank you for walking along the Purple Line with us and joining us today on this Friday. Just to get right into it, can you share your experience in community service and talk about why it's important to give back to the Latino community?
Wow, community service. I've had a long career in community service, primarily in the Hispanic community across the United States. I served on my high school's board of directors. I served with the Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation. I was a member of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. There was a point in my life where I wanted to get an MBA, and I looked at these leaders in the National Society of Hispanic MBAs called NSHIMBA, and I admired them and what they'd done. I said, man, someday I'd love to get an MBA, and I'd love to be in that group. Got an MBA, was in that group, and I became president of the Detroit chapter of NSHIMBA, which was great. And as part of that, there was we did an executive breakout, and there was a couple executives that, hey, there should be something focused on Hispanic technology executives. We should really create something because there wasn't, there's still not many not now, but there was definitely not back, 15 years ago. So I created High Tech, the Hispanic IT Executive Council. Now I co-founded it. So now it's one of the leading technology leadership organizations in the world. And then right around that time when I was starting High Tech, even a little bit before, is when I got involved with CHLI, the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, when I was at Oracle, and joined the board, advisory board, and then the board. And then I was between board and advisory board. I've been involved with CHLI for almost 15, 16 years or so. Did that. And then I've been on different community boards. Right now, I'm on the board of the National Museum of Mexican Art. I'm on the board of WTTW in Chicago, which is the PBS station. And I've just started Angeles Investors, not just, but about 3 years ago, co-founded that with several amazing leaders. And we are finding, funding, and growing the most promising Hispanic and Latinx startups in America. So it's kind of the service. So I would say, and I might be missing one or two in there, but what I would say is that it's been a kind of continuous progression of organizations that have helped build my network, but I've also learned a lot of professional development skills. I've met phenomenal dear friends to this day. You also give back, and also I learned by giving back as well. So those are some of, or if not most of the organizations I've been in, my thoughts around giving back and being part of those.
Absolutely, and it's great that you mentioned Angeles Investors. I think for a lot of folks, they start with a community service career, Congress, nonprofits, whatnot, and then wonder how to make the jump into investing into the world of finance. Tell us how you started that and why you started that, and dive a little more deeply into what you're doing with it now.
Sure. So when I got my I come all my parents and grandparents came from Puerto Rico. We
Mhm.
in Chicago with nothing. So I never came into money or anything like that. And then my family graduated, go to college, and then I fast tracked in the technology industry, multiple senior technology executive roles at Accenture, Oracle, Verizon, Ford Motor Company, and a couple others. Um, so as I was doing that, I got my MBA at Notre Dame, which is phenomenal network, great education. when I was at Notre Dame, I really started to learn and really fell in love with startups, startup ecosystem, the amount of wealth that was getting created by not only the investors in those companies, but the actual startup founders and teams, how they were growing and scaling. So that got me into the investing side of it. So I started doing angel investing in these companies, and as I was doing that, I looked down and I said, these are great companies, but there's very few Latino companies that I'm seeing. And then even alongside investors, I had, and at least in Irish Angels, Notre Dame's alumni group, there was only like 250 members and like only a handful, less than a handful
Yeah.
of Latino investors. So I said, this is kind of interesting. And a lot of us who are listening to this podcast, know all the data and what's coming, right? In terms of, all the population, the youth, and all the stuff within the Hispanic community. So I said, I think it makes sense that we should create something focused on finding funding and growing the most promising Hispanic and Latinx startups. So did that, started doing that 3 years ago, and it's been a blast. We've created a great national network of angel investors. We've done 22 or 23 investments. We've got our largest check size is like 1.6 million. Our average check size is 200,000. And we're seeing a real tangible difference in the impact that we're having, helping these companies grow and scale. And everybody should win. Our investors should win, the startups should win, our communities should win. And hopefully we can continue to do more of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, what advice would you have to a current Chili intern or Chili alumnus, or really anybody who wants to get into the world of, angel investing or investing generally, and what skill sets do you need to develop?
Yeah, so if I would say, first of all, it's business. So there's two things, multiple things. First of all, it's business acumen. So you should really begin to you don't necessarily need an MBA, but you should just really start to strengthen your business financial statements, marketing, markets, leadership, all these different things that are components of I'll call it like business, right? So that's one. Second thing, and I was on Capitol Hill talking about this, is you also need to grow your financial. You need to grow your wealth. So because eventually you have to cut a check, and that like sometimes the minimum checks here are like $5,000 to $10,000, right? So you got to be careful on that. And then you got to be accredited. So for the most part, you got to be accredited. There's a couple of things that you can do non-accredited invest in startups, but for the most part, you got to be accredited. And there's a definition. It's like 200,000 salary a year, or you and your partner 300,000 combined, or $1 million in assets. So
Yeah.
in either way, you need to either save money or you're going to need to grow that well. So those are two sides you need to do it. And maybe the other thing that I would say is at Analyst Investors, we have a membership level called associate member. And with that membership level, you don't have to be accredited, but you come in and you get to learn about these startups, review due diligence, review the reports, help them, learn about them, watch them grow over time, watch the ones that don't grow over time, where you learn just as much from the ones that sadly don't make it than the ones that do. And you build the network, because the network is very important if to be an investor in these startups as well, and be a successful investor in these startups as well.
That's incredible. And stay right there, because we're going to be right back with more of the Purple Line after this short message. All right. And then Nicole, are we good? Okay. All right. Thank you for coming back to the Purple Line. We are on with David Olivencia, talking about investing, how he founded Angeles Investors, and now talking about his new book called Networking Excellence. Tell us a little bit about it and what inspired you to write this book.
Yeah, so the book Networking Excellence, the work in networking is capitalized because it requires a lot of work. If you ask people what's the number one or number two skill to more rapidly advance in your career, and that's career, political career, work career, whatever, they're going to say it's networking. If you want to find a job or get a new role, they say, oh, you need to network, and you want to more rapidly accomplish your goals. But they don't really teach it in schools. It's very, very rare. And so I wanted to fulfill that demand, to really help those who are reading the book do those things. I also wanted to give back. I wanted to give back my experiences. Networking helped me climb the corporate ladder. Helped me start all those nonprofits that I talked about earlier and grow those, and give back at like how I've been successful in investing, which is all a good chunk of it's networking, and then really give back. I mean, I take my experiences and put them in the book. I've interviewed 30 or so excellent people that I put their stories and their tips and techniques in the book. And I've read hundreds of books on this topic, and I put those in the books. You look at Chile. There's over the whatever 15, 20 years I've been involved with Chile. There's some rock star networking excellence gurus, Link and Mario. They're Ileana, and I can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Phenomenal leaders who I've learned from. I just learned watching them. I learned what they say, they speak, how they pull things together. And take all of that and write it in a book and put it out there for those to fast track and use that. So those are the reasons why I wrote the book.
That's amazing. And not to go over the skis on the book because people should buy it and read it, but definitely buy it and read it. But what are some general networking tips that you'd give to someone who's a college student, might be a current intern? And is there a particularly fun networking story that you have, either good or bad, that you can share just to show that we're all human too? We're not born great networkers.
Yeah. So let's start with the tips.
Yeah.
In my book, I write about there's three major components to networking, and I'm not going to go. I'll go through them at a high level and maybe tell a story there.
Right.
The first is deeply understanding yourself, right? And I say that the more you if you think about the sun, right? It gives us light, it gives us life, it gives us energy, it helps things grow, planets evolve around it. And to our networks, the more we understand about ourselves, we're going to be like the sun to our network, right? Giving it all those great things. So deeply understanding yourself, what you love, what you're good at, what your purpose in life is, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what value can you bring to any relationship. Like that's a lot of hard work. So then a lot of people don't do it, or they do it, they don't really do it in a disciplined way. So that's one part of the foundation. Having smart goals, really smart goals. You can research that online. But when I was, in my mid early 20s, I had kind of high level goals, but nothing really what they call smart. Um, then there's your brand, and as we live in a noisy world. So we live in a noisy world, and it's called now we're moving into an attention economy because we're getting hit with so many different things. So you got to be really specific on what your brand is and what you want to communicate out to the world, and then really communicate that and power the foundation with rituals. Once you have that strong foundation, you identify the right people in your network, who are the right people, and what are the right networks, and you pour all the tons of value into those to help them be amazingly successful, right? And then lastly, you want to go to networking events and leverage social media to amplify the value that you can give to your network on social media and in those networking events. So those are the I call them just some of the tips and the book has hundreds of tips, tools, techniques that you can use. In terms of stories, there's stories on the positive side, and that I'm you'll tell me how much time we have. I'm happy to go into one.
We
But I'd
got
say
plenty. We got plenty.
okay. So the one story on the positive side, and I'll share a negative one as well. I got a column. The positive side is if you look at so I became president of the National Society of Hispanic MBAs. I then went on to be the co-founder of High Tech, and then at roughly when I started High Tech, I was with Chile. In Chile, I was with those two networks. I created. You involved in those. I created them. And then within Oracle at the time, I became involved in Oracle's pack. So you really start thinking about what do you love? You have a foundation. I was like, I love policy, I love technology. And so I was in those networks. And whenever you get into a network, and you're a great example of this, right? You got to get involved. Your
Yeah.
Chili alumni network, that's great, but how do you now get involved and help and support, which is where you get the value. So I did that at the Oracle PAC, and I started doing that enough where at one point there was an event at the White House with a group called TechNet, and for whatever reason, the leaders at Oracle couldn't make it. But since I was involved in the PAC and doing things, they said, "Hey, Dave," they think about you first. Hey, Dave, would you like to go to the White House and do an event with, like, I don't know, the head of the commerce and all these interesting people? I said, "Yeah, what the?" So I get to go to this networking event, and to the extent you can, you see, well, who's going to be there? And I started looking at the people. I said, "Wow, this is an interesting group of people, leaders in technology, Silicon Valley, all that kind of stuff." And I remember going to a networking event. Then, like, they had a couple sessions. They brought in all the different, heads of commerce and all that kind of stuff. And then they had the networking event, and I knew I wanted to connect with this person, and I was, and just doing some of the tools and technique. So the person ended up being the head of the chairman of the Nasdaq stock exchange. And I looked at, and I was thinking, because it's always about value to them, not value to me. It's like, how can I help the Nasdaq? But it's also a win-win. So I reached out, I spoke with the head of the Nasdaq, and we're sitting there talking and all that stuff. Say, "Hey, I co-founded High Tech. A lot of our members and our sponsors, they're on the Nasdaq stock exchange. We'd love to open the Nasdaq at some time, right?" Which is a bold ask, right? I mean, it's, we were all like a 3-year-old nonprofit, and this was, I don't know, 20 or 10 or something like that. And I made a bold ask, and he ended up saying, yeah. So we followed up, blah, 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 and I end up opening the Nasdaq with High Tech when we were 3 years into it, which was, amazing for a 3-year-old organization. So it's one story, and I got lots of other stories that I can chat on as well. But the one story that I use in the book, and I think it's a great example of what we should not do, um, and it's called 911 networking, is what we call it. And 911 networking is when you haven't heard from somebody in years or decades, and they reach out to you and they say, "David, I just lost my job. I'm in transition. I could use your help." And you're like, you didn't even say hi, hello, how's the family? And you kind of went right to it.
Yeah.
So I talk about that in the book, and and how you should avoid that is always keep your network warm. And then you can use social, you can use other ways, to do that. Simple email every once in a while. And we all get busy, but I talk about some tools and techniques that can be used to do that. I mean, social, just putting something out there, thanking those who follow you on a regular basis is an example. But there's many others. So that's one. And there's another one that I share in the book, a story in the book, just about somebody who's going for a job, and somewhat of the same thing. He ended up just spamming the board of directors, saying how he'd like to meet with them, to talk about this job. And he didn't get the job. And the moral of the story there, if you want to start building, relationships well before you need something, and give tons of value and help them be successful. And so, positive story, some couple things to avoid as well.
Totally. You don't build the house when the hurricane's hitting. You've got to do it a few years before.
You got it. You
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah. But last serious question, then we'll get into a lightning round of fun ones. You've had a few transitions for your career. You've gone from community service to angel investing and supporting startups. And as an author now, how is that? How is the process of being an author different from what you've done before? Is it more self-discipline? Is it more, external deadlines? Like, it seems just so different than the experience of many people have in their professional lives working their 9 to 5 jobs. So tell us a little bit about what writing the book was like.
Yes, that's a great question. It is. It's a bit different. It's different. It's different muscles. And as I was writing the book, I ran a marathon, and I compare writing a book, as I was writing, I said, man, this is a lot like a marathon. And then that, you're writing every day a little bit and you're running every day. And on weekends, you'd have a long run. On weekends, I'd have a long write. In both cases, you're preparing for one big day, which is either the marathon itself or when the book is released. But as I got into the process, the authoring process, I realized that it's writing a book is more like a triathlon than a marathon, because the writing a book is like the running part, but then you've got to market the book, right? And the marketing of the book is more like the bicycle. It's a different set of muscles. It's a different strategy. It's different training. It's different tools. And marketing the book is that you really got to be thinking about that early. You don't, you think about that while you're writing the book, which is something I learned. And then there's all the operational parts of of the book, which is like the swimming part. You don't see it; it's not sexy, but under the covers, you're scheduling events, you're doing invoices, you're tracking how your sales are doing, and all that kind of stuff. There is in life, you've had deadlines and coaches and things like that, which have helped me and all that stuff. So you got to be disciplined about it. But just like anything, if you want to be successful in anything, you got to be disciplined about it. But it's more than just the writing of the book. It's all, I was unaware of all the other stuff that you really need to do to be a successful author. But I love it. I love learning. I'm still learning things. I don't, and I love it, and I love to learn, and to the extent I can give back as well, I love giving back, which goes to my foundation, right? I mean, those are the things that I love, will make me happy, my purpose in life. So yeah, that's the writing journey. And by the way, it's still, I mean, I'm still kind of in the next phase. I'm still kind of in call it the bike part, and I'm still out there selling and speaking and all that kind of stuff on it. So it's still the triathlon still continues.
That's amazing, and really, and just a reminder, one, Networking Excellence by David Olivencia, great book. Go out, buy it, read it, give it to your friends and family. And now we can move into fun questions, which they're not really marathons, so hopefully there'll be more sprints of the mind. So first up, what's your favorite TV show or movie, or top two?
I saw this weekend. I saw Air. I think with the Michael Jordan story. And having grown up in Chicago and love business tech, I really love that movie. That was excellent. I like Game of Thrones. I like House of Cards. Those are kind of like series that I like. So those are movies I like.
Love it. You're a disciplined guy. You're a marathon runner. You're an author. You invest. But what's your favorite guilty pleasure?
Ooh, guilty pleasure. I'll eat. That's not like a dessert, like a big, chocolate chip cookie or something like that. It's probably my guilty pleasure.
Okay, amazing. It's Friday. Calories don't count, so you can definitely do it. That's the rule. It doesn't count on
All right.
Fridays. And then and then finally, what's your favorite place to travel or place that you want to travel?
I love to travel. I have 2 million airline miles. The more you see in the world, the more you want to see in the world. I haven't been back to Europe in 10, 15 years. I loved Europe. There's so many places I want to see in the world. I've never been to China. Uh, so many of us. I've never been to Switzerland. There's I've never been to Africa. So I could go on and on and on. We live in a beautiful world, and the more I've traveled, the more I want to see New Zealand. I can go on. So I can't wait till I can travel more and see all these beautiful places in the world.
That's awesome and an inspiration for my bucket list too. So, David Olivencia, thank you for joining us and walking on the purple line, talking about your career, your book, Networking Excellence, and talking about the things that you love to do, whether personally or professionally. Thank you for joining
Yeah, well,
us.
hey, thank you. My pleasure to be on the Purple Line. All those who are listening, get out there and network.
Can't wait. Thanks again, David.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Purple Line. You can follow me at _Keith Fernandez on Twitter, and make sure to follow CHLI across all social media platforms at the CHLI for the latest updates.